Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 7, episode 24. My name's Adeel and I have Misophonia. This week I'm excited to bring my conversation with Sipora Weissman, a licensed therapist in California. We've talked a number of times in the past, and this is the first time we're discussing misophonia on the podcast. We talk about her own personal journey with misophonia, but then we get right into various topics like memory reconsolidation, coherence therapy, internal family systems, medications, the nervous system, of course, and lots more. Really interesting stuff, at times philosophical conversation. You know how I love that. And I think there's something new in here for everyone. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. And by the way, if you do like this episode, head over or leave a quick review or rating wherever you listen to this show, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever. It helps move us up in the search results and reach more listeners. My usual announcements, of course, thanks for the ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. And I need to mention, of course, the book Sounds Like Misophonia by Dr. Jane Gregory and I. A self-help guide for misophones is now available everywhere. You can order online or ask for it at your favorite bookstore. This episode is also sponsored by Basil, the personal journaling app that I developed. It provides AI-powered insights into your journaling entries and guides you with new writing prompts. Based on those insights, you can try different therapy approaches or modalities. It's available again for iOS and Android. Check the show notes or go to hellobasil.com. All right, now here's my conversation with Sipora. Sipora, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be on.
I probably gave an intro before this audio began, but do you want to kind of, in your own words, kind of tell us a little bit about where you are, what you do?
Yeah, I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Ventura, California, although I meet with people online all over the state of California. And what do? I do a lot of things. I see people with misophonia. I see people with what I call mind-body syndromes, but are like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, fatigue syndromes, a lot of these issues where you go to the doctor and they're like, we don't know what's wrong with you. So I see those types of people. I see people, highly sensitive people. I see that. So I see, I think my practice is basically sensitive people and the things that happen to them. And I try to help people with those things. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what I do. Or the people I see.
Yeah, and I probably mentioned this before too, but you're very active on social media, Instagram, so you throw a lot of wisdom out there, a lot of content, so people can definitely check it out and see all the things you work on. But yeah, maybe do you want to start with, I guess, you mentioned you talk to a lot of people about misophonia. Maybe we can start there in terms of how do you find people and what do you tell them, and how do you solve their misophonia?
Oh, that's a big question. It's funny because you and I spoke, I think, a few weeks ago, and I get really excited about misophonia, and then a week goes by and I'm like, oh no, this is hard. And then another week goes by and I go, wait a second, I'm excited, I know what's going on. And then I go, there's a lot of things going on here. And I spoke to you last. I was more in my excited phase. I'm still excited.
Yeah.
But I'm realizing how complex misophonia is.
Well, it's part of a context of a lot of complex things are usually happening with a person, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I have some ideas and questions, but I guess the nutshell of how I got into it was, I was always a sensitive kid. Growing up to certain noises, but it didn't give me a big reaction. I didn't get angry. I didn't get anxious. I just turn the clock off, or ask
Mm-hmm.
for, if I couldn't sleep. It wasn't anything, it wasn't disruptive to my life. And then when I was in college, I had this event where I was next to a girl in my dorm room, and she was playing bass all night long and I couldn't sleep, and I started having panic attacks, had to leave college. And after that event, I was never able to really be in an apartment. If I heard neighbor noise, I'd kind of go into a panic attack and cry. It was, yeah. So it was really terrible. And this started a long time ago, I guess in my 20s. And I saw therapist when I was living in New York. I worked as a TV producer before this, so this is kind of a second career for me. But I
Mm-hmm.
lived in New York, and I saw CBT, I saw a hypnotist, I saw the best advice was Sipora. From my therapist at the time was you have to live on a top floor apartment. So yeah, and then oh yes, then what happened was I moved into an apartment, and I won't get into the whole thing, but it was really, really bad. And I ended up, I'm like, what do I do? Do I soundproof the wall? And I went to a psychiatrist, and he actually put me on a great med, that helped a lot. And, yes. And the issue with, I think, my backstory is, I'm giving you some backstory, is that what happens with me a lot of the things that I treat are things that I've experienced in my life, is that I've had, also in my 20s, chronic fatigue syndrome. And it really played into the misophonia, because if my nervous system was overreactive for too long, I would have a crash of fatigue where I couldn't function. So that's where it got really complicated and really, really bad, because I couldn't even work. So that's when I saw this psychiatrist, and he put me on this med, and things got better. Fast forward, then I moved to LA 10 years ago, was having side effects from the med, started coming off the med, or yeah, coming off the med, and a little bit. And I moved, when I lived in LA, things weren't horrible for me, things weren't bad. But then I moved up here to Ventura County, and I started realizing, no, actually, wait, I'm going to go back. I was in LA, and I was like, what's going on in misophonia world? And I was getting my, my master's degree in social work, and I started reading about memory reconsolidation. And I was like, huh, what's this? And I spoke to a few people about it, and I read a few books, and I was really interested, and I was going to do a therapy, and I was like, I'm not bothered so much. I'm in school. I don't want to spend thousands of dollars right now. So I didn't do it. Then, I hope this is making sense, I moved to Ventura
Yeah.
County, I think 3 years later, in a house. And I started noticing outside noises bother me. And I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like, what's going on in misophonia world? I think this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, I found, I think, Tom Dozier online.
Everyone
And
finds them at some point
everyone,
looking for misophonia.
he was really nice. And he said, why don't you do my therapist course? And I did the therapist course, and I was like, wow, this is great. Wow, I wish I knew this information a long time ago. And I was a new therapist, and I started getting some clients. And then I was like, crap, I don't know what I'm doing here. So then I really had to I consulted with the very few people that are in this world of misophonia, treating it and being like, what's going on? How do I help these people? Learning more, and learning more. And yes, I don't want to keep is there anything I'm talking a lot here. I can keep going onto where I'm at, where I've traveled to.
Yeah, we're on it. We're
We're
following your
okay.
journey. Yeah, we're following
Okay.
your journey, and yeah. So I mean, and I was thinking because this is probably around the time I feel like we kind of first crossed paths was at one of the
Hmm.
conventions. Is this around that time?
Yes, that was a big point for me is a few years ago doing the Misophonia convention. That was a really important thing for me because yeah, I think I connected with you. I connected with Sarah Bidler, who was probably like the kindest person ever, and very
Yep,
nice.
I agree with that.
She's just very, very, very kind. Yeah, so it was just I was just learning a lot more, and then long story short, I was like, this is all not enough to treat this. There has to be something else going on here, and I learned sequent repatterning because I'm a little insane. And I learned it and from Chris Pearson, who's also very nice. And but the issue was, I think a lot of that therapy was hypnotherapy, and I'm not a hypnotist.
Hmm.
So I had to say, but honestly, also I said as I did this, I said, what are the and I started using it with my clients, and I said, what are these really important points here of this, what I felt. And this is a personal opinion. And part of it was coherence therapy, and part of it was internal family systems. I started asking people online, like, what has helped you the most? And a lot of people were like, the parts work. I think people don't understand what was the coherence therapy.
Yeah, maybe
So,
it's worth kind of
yeah,
defining a couple of these terms,
yeah,
especially the sequent repatterning, coherence therapy. Actually, I'm not even sure exactly what that is, and then IFS I'm
yeah.
familiar with, and how it relates to parts therapy, since they all seem
Yeah,
to be all kind of in the same
they're all, yeah.
milieu.
Well, sequent repatterning was developed by Chris Pearson, I guess, a long time ago, and it's these sequential. It's a very specific way that he does it and wants his therapist to do it. And honestly, I separated a bit from that world, so I don't want to say anything that is wrong. But it's a lot of hypnotherapy. I think there's some neuro-linguistic programming techniques thrown in there. He uses coherence therapy in the sequent repatterning therapy. So it was a lot of things. So that's
Hmm.
sequent repatterning. Um, but then what I try to um, look at things and say intuitively to myself, what do I think feels right about what I'm doing and focusing on to help people with. And the coherence therapy was really interesting. And I really dove into that. And that was started by Bruce Ecker and Laurel Hulley. I think that's how you say her last name. I think a long time ago. But now all of a sudden it's getting really popular. And I think maybe because of social media. So coherence therapy is based on the idea of memory reconsolidation. So I trained in it, and now I consult with Bruce Ecker, and I've consulted with a lot of my with him with my misophonia clients, and I've done sessions on myself with him. So coherence therapy, the idea of it is the idea of transformational change, and that a lot of therapies that are more cognitive based can be competing, I guess, with something going on. So it's the idea of misophonia and coherence therapy, which I believe is it's a learned behavior. It's an
Hmm.
emotional learning. So misophonia was learned by the brain. And it's what I think is the brain thinks sound is a threat.
Hmm.
Which I also saw in your book was described very well. Talk about that after.
Hmm.
Um, so the brain views misophonia as a threat, but Why does it do that? And it was, I believe something was learned a long time ago by your brain that linked sound to threat. So, you know, he would say things more where cognitive therapies can be great and helpful and are important. They might not change that original learning in the brain. Whereas a therapy that brings about memory reconsolidation literally makes that old learning go away and doesn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big, statement, I guess, to say something like that. But that's the premise of coherence therapy is that, yeah, it's a new learning comes in and the old learning is erased.
So yeah, so then I guess the next kind of like questions are like, well, obviously, like how does it do the erasing, and also how do you
Hmm.
find what needs to be erased? Is it the same
Yes.
kind of process for everybody, or?
Yes. So um, it gets complicated and I'll explain it, but this is just the basics of coherence therapy. And I hope I'm doing it justice as I explain it. So there are a lot of therapies that can bring about transformational change, memory reconsolidation. Um, and they are more experiential therapies, which mean that in this sense, that you're going back in. You're not just talking about the things that happened to you. Um, Maybe this happened, or I had this trauma. It's not that. It's you're going back in. So great therapies that I'd like for this are like IFS,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not just talking about
Not
what
typical
happened to
talk
you.
therapy, like here, like this is my past or whatever. You're
Right,
talking like,
right. You're going back in. EMDR, EMDR, you are um, literally bringing up, the therapist will guide you to bring up what was the worst part of that memory. Can you feel it in your body? What are the feelings that go with it? It's like you're bringing it back up. So those old neural networks are brought up. So sometimes people are like, well, I don't know, maybe I don't know what that memory was. And the beauty of coherence therapy is the first part of it is the discovery phase. So you're doing this discovery phase of around the misophonia. So it might not just be like, what was your first memory? It might be like, let's talk about what it's like to have misophonia. Can you share with me a recent time
mm-hmm.
that you got bothered? What happened? You know, a great question is there times where where it's the same sound happening, but it's in different locations and you don't get bothered so much. But then it's really dissecting what's happening, what's going on there. And then, so it's really going kind of deep into this old stuff. And then the therapist might ask, there's something about you. And maybe it's like, I feel helpless. I feel helpless. I feel alone and stuck or whatever that is. And for everybody, it's different. That's the thing, too. That's why it's really important to do this discovery work. This is reminding me when I was a child. Um, and, my stepmother was abusive to me and I had nowhere to go. And so and it could take a few sessions of this discovery work. So
Yeah, I was gonna say
then,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
sounded like if I'm hearing the process, it's like yeah, you start with a recent memory, obviously of a
Hmm.
misophonia trigger or a lack of, and then yeah, I guess you start to recognize those feelings, and then at some point you make the jump to when did I feel like this in the past, kind of thing. Is
Kind
that kind
of.
of part of the process? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar to IFS if people hear, which is internal family systems, which is um, talking about parts, right? I have a
Mm-hmm.
part of me that reacts. I have a part of me that's hypervigilant to sounds. I have a part, and it's dissecting the parts a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of find out what is the part protecting, or how long has this part been,
Yeah.
so it's almost similar in that way, but I think coherence therapy is a little more conversational, a little more relational than parts work can be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then you find this emotional learning,
Mm-hmm.
what was learned, and basically you put it into words. And then there's the other work of finding the what Bruce Ecker calls the juxtaposition, which is that, you know, it might be something like that. This cannot okay, my stepmother is dead or something like that. My stepmother, I'm an adult. I don't live with my stepmother, something that kind of can't be true. I guess it's like these two
Mm-hmm.
things. There's these two learnings, and then you kind of have to dissect other things. Like, wait a second, my stepmother is dead. I don't have to deal with this anymore. And so you have these two juxtapositions. And what happens is this is a natural process too that the brain does. This isn't a magic trick or any weird thing. The brain does this, I guess, every day, how it learns things.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a mismatch detector, as Bruce calls it. I don't think that's the clinical term. And the brain says this is this is the correct memory or knowing. This is the correct knowing, and this old thing doesn't make sense anymore. And it goes away. And then there's experiments kind of that are given to the client that it's like a statement of your truth. I want you to read this truth when maybe you're getting bothered by a sound, right? And everybody's truth is different. It might be like their emotional learning, like this means I'm going to, if I hear a sound, that means I'm going to be physically abused or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was learned. Your brain learned that if I hear a sound, that means I could possibly die. So you do these experiments knowing the emotional learning with your brain, having this information in your brain, and maybe going into situations or gradually going into situations, and the brain updates itself. That's a lot. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
and this sounds kind of, having done some IFS sessions. This sounds like
Yeah.
the idea of like going back, yeah, and finding that part, and in IFS terms, that the old exile or even the protector is stuck in the past, and so yeah, it was
Hmm.
maybe in good faith trying to protect you at some point, but doesn't realize that you've grown up. So there's that, I guess, a
Yes.
mismatch there.
Yes. Yes, that is. And that is an update. That is an update. Knowing that a lot of these things are here to, a lot of people are, be like, oh, I hate my misophonia. I want it to go away. I hate it. But when we realize that this is a part of our brain that is just trying to protect us, it gives it a little bit of a shift,
Mm-hmm.
there's a shift there. You could kind of be thankful. Thank you for trying to protect
Right.
me, even
Right.
even though you're a little, stuck back in time. But
Which
like
is
I
the
said,
antithesis of
yeah,
everything in our medical therapy,
yeah,
society, where it's like you have to be adversarial towards whatever
yes.
feels wrong.
And that's the
So
thing with like a lot of CBT. It's like, it's talking to yourself in ways that are like, but you know
me
that
against
it's
me.
just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just something. It's not dangerous. I remember my dad used to tell me, tell yourself it's not dangerous, Sipora. Tell yourself the sound isn't dangerous. I'm like, Yeah, I get that. I rationally get that, but the misophonia reaction happens so fast that you can't. It's hard to say you're fine, you know. But
Exactly, yeah. And to be
yeah.
fair, I think good CBT is kind of more nuanced than that. But yeah, I think yeah, definitely like in popular culture or like the man or woman on the street will take it as like, snap out of it or tell yourself to snap out of it, and
Right.
that's the
Yes.
solution.
So I mean, so I wanted to say that I have like 4 pages left of the book you wrote with Jane Gregory, and it is really amazing. And it's not, and I think it goes a little further than basic CBT or the CBT
Mm-hmm.
therapist that I've seen. It goes way deeper. And I think I'm kind of blown away by it. It's really well written. It was a fun book to read actually. And that it gives a client, I like the idea of that we can also change our brain in the current moment also, and we can do things also in the current moment that doesn't all have to be past stuff. And with
Right.
my clients I work with, we're going to work on maybe this old this old stuff with some of these more deeper therapies, but I'm going to give you these experiments to do or ways to where your brain goes and how to maybe switch that in the moment too, right? And I think that it's so detailed in this book. It's so detailed, and there are so many great experiments to do that, I'm grateful for the book. I'm grateful for the book, and I think everybody with misophonia should read it because it's probably I spoke to a lot of people in the world of misophonia, and the first person that really explained misophonia correctly to me was Bruce Ecker, who created coherence therapy and the idea of emotional learnings in the brain. And then I read that the same thing in the book too. So I guess Jane or you or both of you understand deeper that nobody ever explained that to me. So that this is the brain thinks that there is a threat there. So yeah, I just want to say that the book is excellent, and I think everybody with misophonia should read it because it has a lot of self help tools in there.
Yeah, thank you.
That
That means a lot
yeah
coming from you. Yeah, and but you're right. I
yeah
learned. I mean, I learned a lot from Jane. Jane obviously did most of the work behind this book. But yeah, but you're right. Yeah, it is a lot of exercises and experiments. We say up
hmm
front that not everything is going to work for everybody. I mean, I
yeah.
even have stuff I wrote in the book where I tried the experiments and some of them didn't work for me, and we kept it in there because we want to make that very clear where some things might not work even to the authors. but
And
but
that's for
they have
everybody.
worked on enough people, so to make it worth putting in the book.
And that's for everybody. It's one thing can work
Hmm.
for one person and it might not work for another person. I will get back to actually where I just thought of why I got really also interested in the memory reconsolidation was because in my travels, in my misophonia travels, I have met people or people have contacted me and they say that they no longer have misophonia. And
Hmm.
I go, holy crap. Um, Tell me more, I used to have misophonia. Wait, what? You know, um,
Right.
and each person, what I found was each person that told me this did a therapy that brings about memory reconsolidation. And that's also why I really am focusing on that work right now, for my own learning and to help my clients. Yeah, which is really
So
wild.
yeah, and yeah, I've heard of some of these some of these people as well, and I think what I think they for a lot of people who say they don't have misophonia anymore, there's usually a lot of work that they've done, like
Hmm
many different kinds of therapies. I'm just curious if you have a sense of like, have they done other stuff to get to the point where they can do memory consolidation, or is that or do you start with memory consolidation and that's kind of like the umbrella that
I've
you kind of
heard
work
some
with?
people, they're like, I don't know what this is. Or it showed up a little later in life and they did like
Mm-hmm.
EMDR and the misophonia
That's all
went
they needed.
away.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I haven't talked to that person in depth.
Sure.
There was a person I met that did, I didn't meet this person. He contacted me and he told me he worked with a therapist that did parts of coherence therapy and some NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, and then coherence therapy. That was another one.
You mentioned NLP a couple
Yeah.
times. Do you want to just briefly summarize kind of what you do there? Are you
I don't know that much
linguistically
about
repeating? Okay.
NLP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that much about it. I think back in the day, it was kind of hokey, and a lot of people were like, this is snake oil. And there might be some
Mm.
people that still believe that it's snake oil. Um, but kind of fast forward to today, that there's actually I think a lot of proof and stuff around that it is helping. And I think NLP, there's a lot of these different tools, a lot of different tools.
Mm.
Um, but so I think it's getting more credit today. Um, but where I think, again, I'm just going to go back, like the places where I think it's going to help people is with the memory consolidation. But so that's my NLP thing. But I'll add also that um, as I work with my clients and doing these things with them, I've had people have shifts, but it's not this instantaneous thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some really cool things happen with non-misophonia clients doing coherence therapy. Like really, really, really cool, where a symptom goes away that they're really struggling with. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wow. My misophonia clients, you know, sometimes I question the complexity and that of the misophonia. And um, I think that so these are some of the questions I have, and I don't know what you would think about it. I question if there are two types of misophonia.
Oh
I
yeah, I'm very
question,
much open
right?
to. I'm open to like completely yeah redefining it because with mesokinesia there's
Yeah,
there's a bunch of stuff that just doesn't make it and also yeah the later in life, earlier in life. There's a bunch of things that make me feel like it's more than just like sound is just
right.
one manifestation of the deeper problem.
Right. And I see there's the two types of clients, and I like to call it misophonia classic, where it's like the chewing mouth noise kind.
Yeah.
That happens a lot in when you're a teen, it starts. There's that kind that I see. And then there's the kind of that I struggle with is the bass noise kind that, if
Mm-hmm.
neighbor noise bothers people. Some people have both of these things, right? Some people have both and they don't like either of these noises. But I see, yeah, I see, because there's some people where the mouth noise stuff doesn't bother them, but they get bothered by other outside things. And so I'd be curious down the line if there was some sort of brain scan to see what was happening there. But yeah, that's interesting. And I think that, so that plays a role into kind of how I think about things. At the end of the day, it is, what is the meaning? What did the brain learn? What's the meaning of the sound to the brain? Um, I find that seeing like almost like the chewing kind of misophonia, the mouth noises. It's almost like this protective quality, this boundary that shows up in people that I need to get away from a certain person
Right.
that I might something learned maybe was threatening or whatever, or my brain learned was threatening. Um, so it creates like this boundary. Whereas sometimes what I'm noticing, the outside noise type of thing can be, it's like, what this means something, and usually it's like something with, um, I'm helpless, I'm
Mm-hmm.
alone, nobody's paying attention to me, so those are the kind of things that, yeah, I think about. And I think about also the spectrum of neurodiversity and the highly sensitive person. Also, I think about that, and that some people, I think, are innately more sensitive to noise. um when misophonia comes in, I think it becomes a little, this it gets a little haywire. The brain goes a little haywire with misophonia. But I think a lot of people with misophonia are highly sensitive people. But I don't think everybody with misophonia is a highly sensitive person too. So,
That's from
yeah,
what I've noticed as well. Yeah.
yeah. So there's just a lot of these, it's these complexities around it. I look at myself personally, and I'm somebody that, and a lot of my clients too, with a lot of this nervous system dysregulation, probably
Mm-hmm.
from a history of trauma. So as an
Mm-hmm.
adult, it's hard for us to just even relax, and that takes work to do. That takes that, I put in my own self-care of meditating, doing my best to slow down, doing things that are good for my nervous system, right? I tell that to all my clients. But um, when we take care of our nervous system, we're not going to be so on alert for sounds. We're not going to be, when a sound happens, we're not going to get so dysregulated when we're more regulated. So that's an important piece too. So there's just, yeah, there's a lot of these pieces to misophonia that are interesting, and everybody with misophonia is a little bit different. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, when you talk about the nervous system stuff, yeah, like sleep and obviously
Hmm.
stress and stuff, I feel like that's kind of like table stakes. You kind of want to like take care of that first because that'll handicap you when you're when it's time for a trigger because you're already
Yeah.
part of you, some inner part of you is already looking for looking for problems. And yeah, I feel like yeah, whatever. I mean, I've said this many times. It's not rocket science here, but if you have enough sleep, if you're eating well
Hmm.
and relatively low stress, the amplitude of the trigger is not as high, or the ramp up to get to the maximum annoyance is a lot slower, and you can come back a
Yes.
lot faster. Um,
Yes. Yeah. And
so
that
that
takes work. It
right,
takes effort. Some people could just go about their day and wake up in the morning and go to work and be stressed out and come home and watch TV, and they're fine. But I think people with, like misophonia or other nervous system dysregulation types of issues, we need to practice slowing down. We
so the
need
people
to
who
practice the self-care. Yeah.
right. And so I'm wondering, like, I don't know if you've gone into it as much, but like the coherence therapy and the people who
Hmm.
say they don't have misophonia anymore, is it they don't even get triggered the slightest, or is it that they're able to recover so fast that it's not an issue?
From what I understand, one person wrote to me. Um, you interviewed Cresta, who I spoke with,
Yeah.
who has said to me she no longer gets the flight or fight response. I'm pretty sure that's what she said. I don't want to quote anything,
But
but I'm
she's
pretty
coming
sure
back
that's
on in a couple of weeks too, so
okay.
she'll be doing a
Okay.
yeah.
So
I'll
you
make
can
sure to ask
clarify
her
that with
that.
her.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, I think it's of the people that I talked to, it was just like I no longer have it. I no longer have
Mhm.
it. So, but I think it's there's this thing, it's like another issue is that, there are a lot of sounds out there that like people don't like.
Mhm.
And I remember my sister-in-law who does not have misophonia. She told me she called the police on a guy playing his music too loud out his window in his apartment.
Good for
I mean,
her.
yeah, so I know my partner was driven crazy by he couldn't sleep by a guy blasting a TV in an
Mm,
apartment, and he went downstairs and he kind of yelled at the guy, and then the guy
mhm.
never did it again. And he doesn't have misophonia.
Right, right.
So
We all know about leaf blowers and their menace on all
yes,
types of people.
it's so there's a lot of us have, and then there's some people that don't mind any of this stuff.
Right.
I wish I was like that. But but I think where misophonia comes in is it's the response becomes where life becomes a little debilitating. Life becomes life. I have to avoid certain things. I have to do certain things for my comfort. So that's
Well, I
where I
think it's
think,
by the
yeah,
hijacking, the mental
yes,
hijacking and fight or flight.
yeah,
Obviously, with your partner, there was a
yes,
bit of a, almost fight in terms of yelling, but it's not quite the same
yeah. He was pissed.
hijacking. Yeah, yeah.
He was pissed. But yeah, I think so. It's just a lot of these. I'm curious of other people. I've read I've talked to people online because I do that and I ask them
Hmm.
questions. I'm always curious, and I've had people share with me they've done IFS,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it made it go completely away, but they were doing a lot better after doing IFS.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess more. We need to know more about that and what's helping people. But like I said, where I think this is a lot of the memory consolidation stuff. That's where I think the biggest changer is. But what was I gonna say? Um, I look online and there's all these like people doing misophonia therapies and weird stuff. I've seen some vagus nerve people doing like chiropractors doing vagus nerve
Mm.
exercises with people. Honestly, I think it's kind of interesting too. I don't know if I think it's just another helper of the nervous system to help the nervous system to calm down. Could the nervous system calm down so much that misophonia goes away? Maybe. I don't, Bruce says, or coherence therapy says, that what happens is we could get to a point in life where we're doing really well. We've had therapy. Maybe we've done some basic old school cognitive behavioral therapy. Maybe we've done some meditation. We're doing really good. Things aren't bothering us. But we later in life, a stressor could come in and the old misophonia reaction or other stuff could come back.
Hmm.
That's because there was no memory reconsolidation there. With memory reconsolidation, he says that it doesn't come back. It cannot be retriggered once it's gone because it's a new, the brain gets rewritten. It's a new writing in the neural networks. But yeah,
How does he know that you got it all?
that,
If maybe
what
there's
do you
multiple
mean?
memories, maybe
Oh,
there's.
I think that there could be. So he says, it's the emotional learning, a schema. a schema, and there could be multiple schemas under one issue. And that's what makes it, what I think with misophonia can become, and a lot of people with complex trauma, it can become complicated, that you have to kind of, you have to maybe hitting one schema, it becomes a little lesser. Then you hit another schema. It's kind of like IFS, that you have to kind of heal all the exiles, all the inner children. You have to heal. They're the schemas. They're the schema in that language. They're the what was learned was those exiles, the inner children, and you might have to heal all of them, right? So it's complicated. For me, it's complicated. I think, ask me in a year from now what I think, and I'll probably have some different, ideas about all this
Yeah.
stuff. And I hope to, as I learn more. And I think it's interesting. I'm really passionate about it right now. Misophonia, my clients, they're hard. It can be hard, and I ask myself a lot of times, can I help this person? And I throw everything that I have at those clients, everything that I have to help these clients as best as I can. And I think they get that from me. They get that. So, I question, I think I might go back to some EMDR with some of my clients too. That's another interesting technique, which can talk about that in a different way. But it's complex. I like learning about it. The brain is fascinating. I've always been interested in how the brain works. It's fascinating. I think they were doing some, I think maybe you know about this, I guess, with the drug, was it I can't say it, propranolol? Do you know this?
Yeah, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, so I won't,
Yeah,
I
I
won't
already
attempt
did.
it off the top of my head. But I think there is. I don't think it's been studied yet. I think there's talk of starting to study this drug, and it's used for something else, right? And yeah, well,
Yes,
I'll
I'm not,
I'll I'll
yeah.
I'll mention it in the show notes or something.
But
But
like, yeah, the idea of that is it helps with, I think, memory consolidation. Same
mhm,
thing with, I think, ketamine helps with neuroplasticity. Same, makes our brain, when we take ketamine, the brain becomes more neuroplastic, open to change. So I think these things are interesting, but my caveat in this, and this is just, I could be completely wrong, and maybe just taking these drugs will help people, or this medicine will help people, um, is that I think it would be really cool to do coherence therapy or like IFS or EMDR while also taking one of these drugs.
mhm.
Not just doing the drug, but going to these deeper emotional learnings and then seeing what happens. So I think that would be kind of a cool experiment if I could ever do an experiment. But yeah.
Yeah,
So
so the
yeah,
drug is it's propranolol. It's a beta
yes,
blocker, and
yes.
there is an article on soquiet.org about it. I think it's like new. It's like a 2024 article. Um, but yes, I'll see. So it's a work. There was a paper published by Jaden Webb in January 2022 about it, and yeah, for anyone who wants to read more about it and kind of a So Quiet's comment, they can go to So Quiet. But yeah, it's very early. There's no definitive anything about it,
Right.
and so it would. But yeah, it's something that's continuing to be studied. I know. Dr. Webb has been also looking at psychedelics and to kind of see if that
Yeah.
helps. And I think that is also about just kind of opening up pathways and making it easier to rewire the brain, whether it's
Yeah, I think it's
memories or
fascinating.
whatever. Um,
But yeah, I guess my caveat, like I said, it would be really fascinating to do like some coherence therapy or something on a
mhm.
client and then do the psychedelic and see what happens. That's my, yeah. So, I don't know, but, yeah. So I guess, overall, I want to have, I think I do have hope. I have hope for people with misophonia. And I think it's, because, I think I, something that always bothered me in the misophonia world was the concept of that our brains are different. We have a disability. We have the, because it literally you can get a disability for having misophonia. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
I think in most states, because that sends this message of that we're stuck like this forever,
Yeah.
and that's a tough pill to swallow. And I'm always been somebody in my life and the struggles I've been through in my life. I'm personally somebody that says no. I say, let's find the people that have healed. Let's find the people and all the things. And I've dealt with some crappy things in my life with chronic fatigue syndrome. I've had chronic pain. And I say, who are the people that heal? People heal. And I look at the same thing for misophonia and I see people that get over it. So it's like, is our brain really damaged or is it just a neural pathway issue? Right. So, which is what I think misophonia is. It's kind of a neural pathway issues, and the brain can change. The brain
Yeah.
can change. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I started when this, uh, on the misophonia learning journey, number
Yeah.
of years ago, right around the time you did. Yeah, I think it was. I was also on the train of like, it's probably some defect, and if we just can kind of find it, there's something different about us, and we can maybe eventually get to some medicine.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've definitely evolved more towards the it's not a defect; it's more of a neurodivergent thing. It's not
Hmm.
something that is wrong with the brain. It's I'm definitely leaning towards like if it's something learned during childhood that
Yeah.
you no longer need a reaction. You don't no longer need anymore to protect yourself. It's about fear and trying to protect yourself. And
It
um,
is. It
when you
is.
get down
And
to
I
it,
think it's also so there's different ways the brain takes on emotional learnings. And I did a therapy that I think where now I look back because I've learned a lot more professionally, where they're asking me about my misophonia part. It was an IFS, but it was a parts therapy. They're asking me about what does it do? How does it help you? What is it? And I just kind of like, I'm like, I guess it protects me. I don't really know. And then the whole therapy was based on like, I have this protector of it's helping me somehow. And the therapy didn't help at the end of the
hmm
day. And then I started thinking about that more recently and I talked to Bruce Ecker about it. And I'm like, I don't, misophonia, it doesn't protect me in any way. I just get anxious. There's nothing,
hmm
it's not, to my knowledge, it's not. And he said that it's because it's the meaning behind the sound. Some people, it
hmm
might be some sort of protection mechanism, which I mentioned. But I think for me and for a lot of people, it's what's the meaning of the sound? You hear the
right.
sound, and what is the brain? What is the brain? It's not like I'm just frozen. I'm frozen. I get frozen. I get scared,
hmm
and so it's the meaning. It's like you're going back in time, and for me personally, where I am discovering it, my meaning is of helplessness. I am helpless. I am alone. I'm helpless
hmm
and alone, and that comes from my own history in childhood. I am helpless
Yep.
and alone, and tortured also, and being tortured, and nobody's helping me. I'm being
hmm
tortured, and nobody's helping me. And so that's not protecting me in any way.
Yeah.
It's just what did the brain learn that the meaning behind the sound. So it's yeah, it takes yeah, I think I think every therapist should at least learn a little bit of coherence therapy, because it really, even if you don't do coherence therapy in your practice, it just helps you to learn more about the brain and how the emotional learnings and how to make therapies like IFS or EMDR more um, helpful, that memory reconsolidation happens. Because I've talked to plenty of people that said, I've done EMDR, not misophonia related, but
Right.
I've done EMDR and it didn't help me, didn't do anything.
Hmm.
And I think that's because there's these little nuances that coherence therapy has taught me about how to make therapy more effective. So, but it's all learning. It's all a learning experience. This is all, it's a lot of learning.
Yeah, it's a cliche, but
Yeah.
one thing that works, or one thing you read about or is offered by
Yeah.
some therapist is not going to work for everybody. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're right, if it's a
Yep.
meaning behind something that kind of, that doesn't explain, but it kind of points to why, um, it's not the same sound for everybody. It's not the same fix for every, well, quote unquote, fix for everybody. It's not,
Yeah.
but also why, another person who might have experienced the same abuse doesn't get misophonia. Now, do they get something else? Does it
Right.
manifest in a different way?
Right.
I
Right.
would guess yes.
Yes. I'd guess yes.
Something is gonna happen. In most cases,
I'd
maybe
guess
not.
yes. Yes. I think there is that genetic, the meerkat
Mm-hmm.
analogy in there. There's that genetic component of that. Maybe we just hear yeah, we have can hear more sounds in our environment. There's a geneticness around it. That plays into it. And somebody with a different type of trauma or something, maybe they develop a different disorder of some sort that they need to tackle on their own. So, yeah, trauma, complex trauma, um, it manifests in different ways for different people. But also, I think I want to add in also that I've worked with a few kids, and it's not like hardcore trauma that they experienced. A lot of my adult clients have had trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so important for the therapist to know about trauma, because a lot of my adult clients, there is a lot of trauma. But I've worked with some kids, and it's not hardcore trauma that's happened to them, but they have misophonia. So and in those cases, I think it becomes some sort of a boundary from the parent somehow. I'm not exactly sure how, but that's what I think
Yeah.
for
So
something
I've heard
going
the
on.
yeah, no, I've heard the name, the boundary, come up, and I've heard it also in in my past experience, the idea of and what do we call it, like an unknown boundary or unspoken boundary, which is
Yeah.
like you could do something or something could happen, and then your loved one could go off, and you don't know what you as a child
Hmm.
didn't understand or weren't
Yeah.
told what that boundary was, but a line was crossed, and now your body has to somehow make sense of it, and they
Yep.
probably your body could decide that, oh, this has happened a few times, it's probably related to this, sound or something, or what's happening around this time, what are you noticing, and if your brain notices sounds, that's what gets imprinted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is the late
Yes.
in the conversation, so I'm getting all philosophical, but
Yeah.
but I'm kind of like looking back to my past and trying to make this connection, and I feel like that makes the most sense to me.
Hmm. Yeah. It's the brain is weird. The brain is weird. And, I think, what was it? Was I talking to you but like a
Well, it's a
lot
work
of
in progress, like, yeah, not
it's,
just within our own minds, but like over millions of years. So,
yeah. But I guess it's like for, a lot of people are forced to go to the dinner table, and if you're going to
hmm
get yelled at the dinner table, I mean, you're forced to be there. Your
right,
brain is going to start to say, this is dangerous. And these sounds, get linked to that danger. And then it just keeps on going. So, yeah, yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, and
So yeah, we're
interesting.
getting a little. Yeah, we're already yeah, I guess about an
Yeah,
hour, a little over an hour. But I want to
yeah,
maybe start to close up by just
yeah.
wondering, like, you know, like what is, I don't know if maybe we covered it, but like, has something worked for you recently? Like, are you trying to coherence? Have you done that, or like kind of day to day, or are you still kind of like
Yeah.
AirPods and or earplug? I know you were looking for earplugs recently. I
Yes.
don't know if you found
Oh,
that found
the
a pair.
AirPods. I was, yeah, yeah, yes. You are, yes, you're my audiophile helper. I also like good sounding things, so it's important to
Yeah,
me that my electronics sound really good. But yeah, I did get new Air. I did get the Pros because the other ones were falling out of my ears.
yeah.
But okay, that's a different topic.
No, it's
So
fine.
personally, where I am at in my journey is I have to do a lot of my own work still. I have to use
Hmm.
a lot of these, do a lot of these. I think even with the coherence therapy, they give you a thing to do and you have to do it and do it. And I even, procrastinate on my own doings of that. But I think honestly, I put in more to my clients than myself. I put in a lot more effort into helping people and learning about it.
Hmm.
But what's interesting to me is through this process of learning, and I have done some sessions with coherence therapy. I'm doing IFS therapy. I'm doing internal family systems. I do
Hmm.
that. It's slow. It's a little
Yeah,
slow.
I noticed that. I
It's
want
a
to
little
definitely follow how your
slow.
progress is on that.
It's a little slow. My we had a kind of come to Jesus moment, me and my therapist, around because I said I want to work on the misophonia, but all these other parts showed up.
Yeah,
And he's like, "We're gonna get to the misophonia. Don't worry, don't worry." And I was kind of getting a little annoyed.
I
And
was the
then we had
same
to
way
come.
a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and
we
I
did a lot of
asked.
good stuff. I wasn't annoyed with my
Yeah,
therapist. It was more just, oh, I'm learning about misophonia. I'm learning that it just takes longer.
maybe,
Maybe.
maybe. And that's I actually did a session in my with Bruce Ecker that was recorded, and I sent it to my therapist.
Hmm.
And he's this great guy, and he's really kind. And he said, "Sipora, I'm kind of," because I think he saw the depths of what happened with my session with Bruce, and he said, "I'm sorry, let's work on the music." Yeah, and I'm like,
Hmm.
finally. Um, so I am doing that. He's great. He's great and good person. Um, but there's an interesting thing that has showed up for me is that I used to have this feeling of I'm when I got triggered by a sound of this instant reaction of panic and I'm helpless and going into a full-fledged panic attack. Now there's a part of me that shows up that's like, I can sit with this sound. I don't go into the panic right now.
Hmm.
Probably because of where I'm living is there's sounds. It's a good tester for me, a good experiment place for me where I live now, but it's not really, really horrible. But I could I know what's going on now. I have this different, before it's like, what the F is happening to me? What is going
Hmm.
on? Why am I reacting in this way? Nobody even knows. Nobody could tell me. But now I know. And that brings down my anxiety. That brings down the
Yeah.
anxiety. And I could say to myself right now, I can sit with this sound if I hear it,
Hmm.
or if I'm having a really tired day or something like that, and I want to put my sound machine on or something like that, I could do that too while I'm working on this. While I am working on this. But it's less of a helpless reaction that I have now. Now it's like I have more of I guess knowledgeable choices that I can make around this. But I still have
Right.
my own work to do. For then that is true. So
Yeah. No, it's
if
great.
that makes
And yeah,
sense.
oh, totally it makes total sense. Total sense. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I feel like, well, now that I've learned a lot of this stuff, yeah, I don't have it quote unquote cured, but I feel like that, yeah, I don't know. I feel like because I know more context about it in time. that I can I don't know, I can come back to normal faster. Or I can do things like
Yeah.
I can do things like, okay, well, I can recognize the energy when it's bubbling up and decide to, well, not decide to, but just try to like um, um, just try to save it for later, kind of thing. I've talked about this in the past, where it's just like sometimes
Uh,
the energy is powerful if you can somehow just try to save it for a more productive energy, creative
that is
energy, or something
good.
like that.
Yeah.
I try to do that. It doesn't always work, but now I have all these tools which I would never have even thought about, even a year ago or 2 years ago. So, um,
I think that's great. I think the tools in the book are excellent to
yeah,
do.
right,
But I think it's personally for me having the knowledge of doing the discovery work of my own history, my own life,
yeah,
that this is not some weird random thing that makes zero sense. Now it makes sense to me, and that has brought my anxiety down. Just
yeah,
understanding that it has not made everything go away just yet, but it says there's more context there for me, and I understand things which make it more I can handle things better. That's for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, I also like
So
what we talked about before is like not looking at it as a deep. I think what was kind of mind blowing was that shift to kind of think of it as it's actually almost a useful tool, or it was in the past and now not as much. But if it can kind of like help you um, cover a bunch of
for
other,
some
yeah, right,
people, it was a
right,
useful tool. For
right,
some
right, right, right,
people,
right, right.
right? And that's the differences what I kind of
True,
described, where I
true, true,
think for
true.
some people, it is that boundary and it's a helper. And it's
Hmm.
like, thanks, brain, for protecting me and helping me, But for some people, I think
Right.
it's like this, it's like it sucks you back. The hearing the sound sucks you
Hmm.
back into I am back to that place where
Yeah.
I am not attuned to. I am alone. Nobody's paying attention to me. I don't matter. And I am stuck back. I'm back in the hell. I'm back in
Hmm.
this hell. And this sound is reminding me of being back there. So there's it's different. That's why I think it's different and important to know about,
Right.
the brain. Yeah. So
One thing that I'm always
yes.
curious about is like, thousands of years ago, if it really was kind of like trauma related, like it must have happened to people, and like, were did people grow up and this kind of would dissipate naturally, and maybe there's something about now where we just have to move so fast, the whole cliche of modern life is something about now where we're more disconnected with certain things, that it's taking a longer or making it harder. I don't know.
I think also, yeah, I don't, I always think about like, what did people do back in the day when they had all these issues?
I go
Maybe they
into
were
Google searches every once in a while.
institutionalized.
Yeah.
I don't
I go
know.
to Google searches once in a while and be like misophonia in some Byzantine time or something like that, and nothing really comes up. But
Huh.
maybe I'll
Well, I know back
tr-
then the world was not as noisy, right? Now we
true.
live in, or as stimulating. We live in a
Well, I
very
saw,
high stimulating world now.
interestingly, yeah, but I feel like now it's more of a prepackaged stimulation, right? With like TV and sound and even music these days. I don't
Yeah.
think stunk a lot more back then because there was no sanitation and stuff. I wonder if
Oh
people had
God. Yeah.
nasal misophonia, but that's a whole other podcast, maybe.
There is, I remember, in the training I did with Tom Dozier a long time ago, he
Yeah.
mentioned sense. And there are people that
Hmm.
have what is called multiple chemical sensitivity. And I think what in my travels in the chronic illness world, it's a limbic system probably similar to misophonia. The brain goes danger, danger, danger. And then a lot of
Right.
people actually have these symptoms that happen to their
Hmm.
body, but it's a dysregulation in the nervous system. It's a false message coming from the brain, or a protector message coming from the brain. So there are these different, yeah, there are overlaps, which are,
Yeah.
so yeah. So
I
anyway,
find this fascinating. I'm sure some of the listeners are kind of like maybe being
I
like,
know.
okay, this guy's getting a little bit
We're
on one of
going
his
off. We're
lacquer
going
teeth.
off the way. Yeah, we're going way
But
off. Yeah, yeah.
I love this stuff as much as as much as the more established stuff. But yes, Sipora, I mean, great to have you on. Always nice to talk to you and good to have you
Yeah.
on here on the record. Um, yeah, hopefully, yeah, we'll be in touch and look forward to kind of hearing more about your journey as you're trying different things.
Thank you. Yeah, and I love always talking with you, and I'm impressed with you and the work that you do to help people, and your own work that you're doing on yourself is pretty impressive too. And we all have to, I think, do this work.
Thank you again, Sipora. Fascinating stuff, and I'm glad we can bring this to a wider audience. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. You can follow there. Or Facebook, and on Twitter or X, it's Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.